All right, so I was talking to a group of agents literally just a few days ago, and I asked them, Ben, what are the vital signs of a real estate salesperson's business? And I was shocked to learn that most agents don't understand what are the vital few things that they have to do on a daily basis to keep their business from being on life support. And it's no surprise why most agents' business is, in fact, just that, on life support. It's on its last leg before they get out of the business because they don't understand how to prioritize their business because of this FOMO. I feel like I have to do all of these things because I see them and I hear about them, et cetera, et cetera. So what I want to do in this episode is I almost want to look at this as like we'll call it a training. A high productivity training that we're going to walk them through this process of subtraction to move forward, this process of essentialism to look at their business. It's the same thing that I would do if I was coaching an agent and what I would have them do inside the first 30 days of working together. Because what they'll find and what they'll see for the very first time is, wow, I waste a lot of time. So let me tee this up by this. We talk about vital signs. So when you and I were talking about that this morning, when there is a car accident and the paramedics show up on the scene, their first priority is to check the person's vital signs. Yes, the body temperature, the pulse, their breathing, right? Their blood pressure. Now, everyone listening to this is like, yeah, dude, no kidding. Like, oh, good one, Brandon. But okay, well, why is it that it's so unclear then of what the vital signs is of your business? Why is that such a mystery? Because to me, those are as clear as like keeping somebody alive. But realtors don't know. So that's why I bring it up. You know what I mean? And so when I would ask the audience, as you're listening or watching this podcast, put them in the comments. And you and I can go back and watch the comments. And people will say things like, this is what people told me when I was talking to this group of agents. They were saying things like, well, I've got to post on social media every day. I have to send out a weekly email newsletter. I have to role play and practice my skills. They're all important, Ben. They're just not urgent. They shouldn't take the place of the vitals, which we're going to talk about in just a minute. And that's what's going on. Let me be really clear. What's going on is this misunderstanding of important and urgent. So let me give you the best example ever. Having another conversation about this with an agent that I'm coaching. And we're talking about his client event this year. And we're talking. And I said, well, hold on, pause for a second. What about these three? And we're talking about the vital signs in a second. Let me ask you some questions about your vital signs. And we go through 1, 2, and 3. Again, I'll give the audience that in just a second. And he starts to tell me like, well, that one's not that great. And that one's not great. And I said, well, hold on. You don't add anything onto the business like a client event, like a birthday program, like a raving fan club system, like a social media thing, like a weekly email newsletter. You don't add any of that until the vitals are taken care of. And what I've learned is that agents, because they hear about all these things, that they do those without taking care of their vitals, which makes sense why their business is on life support. You only do the things that we talk about with the assumption that you've taken care of your vitals. You know what I mean? Like, does that make sense to you?
Absolutely.
And so success is a process of elimination, of taking things away, ripping things. Stop doing that. Stop doing that. Stop doing that. Stop doing that. You stop doing everything until the 3 vitals are taken care of. And most agents they have it freaking backwards. They're doing everything but the vitals because it's their way of creative avoidance, of avoiding the actual work. So let's give the audience what the vital few are. and then we can get into this. And this is the debate that I'd love to have with anybody, because people bring up all this stuff. I'm like, well, the question is, could you go out there and get a listing by doing what you're doing? Or if you eliminated the thing you're doing, could you go and still get a listing? And that's the exercise I would have everybody go through. And so the vital few are, number one, prospecting. Proactively having conversations with potential clients. Number two, lead follow-up. Following up with those people who you've had conversations with in the past to actually set appointments. And then number three, going on appointments and presenting. These are the three vitals that must get done on a daily basis. Everything else, the argument is I'll have an agent say, well, what about this? What about that? And I said, my question is this. Can you go and get a listing without doing a weekly email? Well, yeah, I could. Okay, cut it. Could you get a listing without posting an Instagram reel once a week? Yeah, I could. Cut it. And I say cut it because if you're doing an Instagram reel once a week and not prospecting, your priorities are screwed up.
That's right.
If you're doing, if you're previewing property and you're not prospecting, your priorities are screwed up. Eliminate it. Eliminate everything until you're doing the three vitals on a daily basis without ever missing. All right, I digress. Your thoughts?
Sitting here listening to this, I think about, well, I'll come to that one second, but there's a movie, 127 Hours. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's about this guy that's out in the middle of I think Arizona, rock climbing. He's in this like crevasse or something. He's climbing. He falls. His arms get pinned. Okay. He sits there for 127 hours. And his vital signs, right? He had water. He ran out, right? His breathing starts to his temperature starts to drop. It's nighttime. He knows that if I am going to survive, I have to eliminate something. Most people are unwilling to do this. What does he eliminate? He saws his own arm off. He cuts his arm off with a little, I forget what it was. I think like a little pocket knife, right? Most people couldn't do that. He knew I've only got this amount of time before my body's going to go into shock, right? I've got adrenaline, but then I'm going to pass out. He made it through that, right? And got to help and survived. Most people would just slowly just kind of like
fade away,
right? You look at corporations. This is my last thought, and then we can keep moving. What do? When things are really good, they add all the fun stuff. But then when things start to shift, what do? There's these mass layoffs. They get back to the core so that they can continue to build up again.
It's so spot on, and it's just, this is a huge issue that is running through the real estate industry like crazy, and it's because of all the information that people have access to. Because we're in this information age, there are so many distractions that people are literally confused, Ben. They hear people talk about, the importance of building a personal brand. Building a personal brand is not important. It's just not more important than having conversations. Business is a process of managing priorities. And so people get twisted. So they hear a message like build your personal brand is important. I agree. But not to the extent that you do that. Okay, here's why I put it. If you spend all your time building a personal brand, whatever that means, right? You build a personal brand, but yet never talk to anybody. You never talk to any prospects ever. Do you stay in business? Ooh, no, you don't. Okay, so then why are you prioritizing building a brand? Okay, let me give another one. I hear this all the time, business cards. This is a huge one with new realtors. They tell me, well, Brandon, I don't want to go to this networking event. I don't have any business cards to pass out. Okay, let me ask you a question. Can you take a listing without a business card? Of course I can. Okay. The business card is not the thing that gets you the appointment. It's the thing that you've made in your mind. It's why we call creative avoidance. You've created this story in your mind that says, well, I have to have a really fancy logo before I actually go and meet the prospect. Well, I promise you, you can get clients without a logo. But the opposite is not true. Just because you have a great logo doesn't mean you're going to get clients. And so agents continue to operate this way, and they misunderstand what the actual work is. The hole still needs to be dug. And they spend all their time on what's the right shovel, this color and that color, and what type of metal, et cetera, et cetera. And they never get around to actually putting the shovel in the ground and digging the hole, right?
Maybe this is taking us off track. Pull me back if you think it is. But I'd love to dig into, you and I have talked about this many times, beginner's luck versus like a complete expert, right? In that in-between stage. You know, as we get started, as a beginner, we do the basics. We don't know anything. So what do? Oh, you know, if we're trying to do XYZ, we ask a few questions. We say, I don't know. I would have to figure that out. Let me do some research. We stay to the bare minimum of talking to somebody, asking some questions, asking for the sale. We don't overcomplicate things. But then we get all this education. We learn about all these tools, all these different things. And all of a sudden we destroy ourselves and set ourselves back. But then when we truly master the craft, we pretend to be the guy that doesn't know anything in the beginning, because now we know how to ask better questions, play kind of, you know, be a little bit more coy to really get the truth out. So I don't know, that evolution plays into this a little bit of just doing the basics. Beginners do it and they have a little bit of beginner's luck, and experts do it. They just focus on the basics. So it's just this, where are you in this journey? And how do we get you just focused on the basics as much as possible, these vitals?
That's right. I mean, top producers never not do the basics, and low producers never do the basics because they misunderstand the basics for not being valuable. That's really what's going on here. They look at it and say, well, it has to be more than just that. Like, Brandon, come on, dude. Like, it's got to be sexier than that. It's got to be more complicated than that. It has to be. And that's because marketers are ruining this industry. They're ruining this industry. Marketing messages around, you know, making things seem overly complex distracts the mind from the basics, from the fundamentals. And so they feel like they can skip over the fundamentals and go to that sexy thing. That's why I made a video not too long ago, and I said, the dumb realtors make all the money. And what I meant by that was the difference between the person who never does the basics because they can't accept that for what it is, which is the truth, that you've got to actually execute on the basics to win. And so they spend all their time just getting all this information, and they know everything about every CRM. They go to every seminar every weekend. They travel all over. They spend all their money in traveling. They know all the latest marketing gimmicks and tactics, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They never actually do the basics, and that agent is broke, but they're the smartest agent in the room. They could go on stage and tell you about every single piece of marketing stuff. You're like, wow, that guy's pretty talented, and they're broke. And then the dumb agent that says, well, I've never heard of Real Geeks before. What? Real Geeks? What's that? Is that like a person? No, that's a website. Well, I've never heard of that because they're too busy doing the work. They're too busy being productive. They're too busy doing the actual things. They're too busy being successful to pick their head up to care about all the distractions, you know?
So true.
Yeah. It's like, well, yeah, I don't have time to lollygag and go through every single webinar of every ad that comes up on Facebook, dude. I'm too busy actually prospecting, doing lead follow-up, and going on appointments. You're too busy getting information to prospect, lead follow-up, and go on presentations. You're too busy going back and forth with your Fiverr designer on what color logo you want. You're too busy on Vistaprint coming up with what folders do I want? Do I want the matte finish or do I want the glossy finish? You're too busy with all of that And then your business is on life support because you don't do the vitals. You don't take care of the vitals. And so the point is this, is that it's not that those other things aren't important. Do not hear me wrong. I could just hear somebody say, what are you saying, Brandon, that I shouldn't, have a really nice website and folders? I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that those things shouldn't be prioritized over your vitals. It's take care of the vitals, and with whatever time you have left, you can go do the other things. That's what I'm saying.